I think at the core of it's the Bible and Bible study. And again, there's all kinds of ways to do that. There's electronic ways to do it. There's old school, get the black covered Bible out, which for me, I think is I tried to do that over the years. It was hard, just to like read the Bible, page to page.
I'm Art Blanchford, and this is Life in Transition, a podcast about making the most of the changes we're given. As a married father of 3 teenagers, a longtime global business executive and adventurer, I've been through hundreds of transitions in my life. Many have been difficult, but all have led to a depth and richness I could never have imagined. You'll get to hear all about them on this podcast so that together we can create more love and joy in our lives, no matter what transitions we are going through. Good morning and welcome back to another episode of Life in Transition. I'm really excited today to have Greg Hewitt with us, who is a strong Christian believer, family man, married for 33 years, 2 grown daughters, and just a new grandson, and former big corporate executive, high-level executive, and still a businessman, but now focused on purpose and giving back in that business. And for me, maybe most importantly, also a good friend of mine who helped me to get started on my transition when I was struggling to come out of the corporate world. So Greg, it's really exciting and really good to have you here. Most welcome.
Thank you, Art. It's a pleasure. Thanks for your friendship and the opportunity to hopefully today help others on the same journey I'm still on and have been on.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Jumping right in, this podcast is about transitions. So what do you feel is, the biggest, most important, most meaningful, impactful, or it doesn't have to be the most, but a significant transition that you've had in your life, Greg, that's had a very big impact on you?
Yeah, I think, there's a few. I think the first was when I, as a 20-year-old, dedicated my life to Christ, which is I'm 59, so almost 40 years ago, a long time ago. So that kind of got me on the right path. So that was a blessing for sure. And then I was fortunate, as you said, I've been married almost 33 years. That was obviously a transition, and God brought me Karen, and that was a blessing. Probably the next one is kids. Obviously, blessed to have two daughters now, basically 25 and 30, and then obviously I'm in a transition now, obviously with a grandchild. So those are kind of life, just you get older type of things, and then I think the other transition more over the last 4 or 5 years is just, getting older and, reflecting on as life has gone on and kind of, getting refocused and really rededicating my life to Christ and getting my priorities really, more in line, beyond just, working and providing, which, fortunately I did a good job, I think, over the decades. But, when I got into my 50s, I, just felt like, okay, it's halftime or middle-aged type things, which I think probably a lot of the folks in the audience are probably thinking the same thing is, okay, how do I do that? So, that's been the other, kind of the last 4 or 5 years, and I'm still working on it, is how to finish strong.
Yeah, how to have a great second half. Well, which one of those, there's a lot of transitions. Which one of those feels most present with you right now? I know which one I'm intrigued by, but what feels most present with you that you'd like to dig into a little bit more today?
Well, the faith part is, I think undertows all of it, over the last 4 to 5 years, once I had enough time to settle down. And that was a blessing to be able to do that. Not everyone has that liberty to kind of put the brakes on. So I know that and appreciate that. And, or urge to do that. I just was. And so I just encourage wherever you're at in your journey to, whether it's keep working or not or whatever. But the main thing particularly is to definitely slow it down, try to. And then for me, when I did that, that did bring me closer to Christ. And then that's still a journey I'm on to be, like I was in Bible study this morning with a group and 28 other men and really just going deeper into the Word and, fellowship and community. So that's kind of at the core of my redefinition, frankly, over the last 4 or 5 years, and it continues to develop, frankly.
So, faith is a super important thing to me. It is to a lot of people. It's Arthur Brooks says you can't really be happy in life without it, right? So if we go back to that point, you said you first came into faith at 20 years old. Um, what did you learn at that point? How did your life shift at that point? And then
Yeah.
how has that informed the rest of your time? Because something I'm also very curious about and very interested in and still developing my faith journey as well. So I'm curious what that was like for you at 20 and what shifts did you see? What changed? What didn't change maybe that you expected to? Like tell us a little bit more about that.
Mm. Yeah, that's a great question, Art. Is for me, I think it was kind of almost like a, somewhat a Maslow hierarchy of needs. It was kind of the bottom part of faith is just almost like a morality change. Not that I was immoral before I was, before I was saved, but it's like a light that I got that like a, that in the heart, and my heart changed. Maybe my actions did not obviously totally change, but a little bit just like spiritual right and wrong became more clear to me at that point. And when I would sin, and by the way, I'm still sinning.
Yeah, that's from God is a sin, and all of us do it to one degree or another. And
Yeah, but he shined the light on that clear at that time, as he does now. And but it was like black, a little bit more black and white back then. Maybe I knew better, whatever I was doing, nothing terrible, but all sins. But then it's, oh man, and maybe I kept doing whatever I was doing, but that's not right. That's not what I should be doing. And then I think that's really the transformation began then, and it's still going. Right, almost 40 years later, hopefully it's accelerating,
right, right.
and I'm going deeper. And what I've learned, and I try to share this with folks that are older or younger, but definitely younger, don't wait like I did. Don't wait till you're 50 something to go deeper. It's okay to do it when you're 20 or 25 and 30, and you can make the time. A lot of it is, I think, that in my case, I was, you got out of college, you get a job, you get into, fortunately enough, a career you enjoy, and life happens. You get family, kids. You're so busy.
Yes.
And then though you may on paper say, okay, I'm a believer and I'm following God, but the reality is really, really how much time are you investing in that relationship? For me, it was very little.
Right. And that's one luxury I have to say I find now in my life, like you, compared to 10 years ago or 20 years ago, 30 years ago, where I feel I have time, where I didn't feel. And I know a lot of it was perception, a lot of it was reality, both, but I feel like I have time of doing that. But when you say going deeper, because you talked about, coming to faith in your 20s or when you were 20 and now you're going deeper, and then you talked about time, is that the main thing or what other things, how can you tell when you have a closer walk with God? How can you tell when you're deeper in your faith? What does it look differently? Besides, you mentioned spending the time. What else is there? Do you feel different? Do you behave different? Are your actions different? Is your peace different?
Yes, all the above. Yeah, yes, and I just feel closer to the Lord, and like He's with me, and our relationship is stronger. And therefore, I'm talking to Him, and I think He's talking to me. And it's not like it's like a character, and it's beyond my pay grade to know exactly. But I did feel the presence with me, which and guiding me more in my walk. I find, like most folks say, prayers at night, prayers in the morning. That's somewhat commonplace, but now I feel like I'm, really doing that, and then I'm even definitely when I wake up, I'm thinking about it, which is a good thing, and then it just gauges me right into that God time in the mornings, which I'm a morning person, so I immediately try to get into that immediately with some Bible study, scripture, quiet time. And that's all reasonably new for me, frankly, over the last several years. And again, I could have done that when I was 25 and super busy. It's not like it's 24/7. It's 10 minutes or 5 minutes. It's all about positioning the day. And then I find as the day goes on, it's not like turned off my faith and I turn it back on when I say my prayers at night. It's more conscious for me.
Right, right. More awareness, more staying connected to God all the time in the walk. I know that scripture when I first heard it when I was maybe, I don't know, 12 about pray without ceasing. I thought, what kind of BS is that? Sorry, how can I have to live my life? How can I pray without ceasing? And yet I feel like, I mean, most of the time now, I'm really trying to check in. Okay, God, what's your will for me right now? What's
For
your will
sure.
for me right now? Before I come on this podcast, okay, God, let me be a vessel. Let me be a tool. Use me
Amen.
how you will for this podcast,
No,
right?
I agree. I agree
And
100%.
so I want to ask. Then this question is, it's it's personal to me. It's some of my skepticism, right? It's like, so I was baptized in a Church of Christ. I think I was in college. I don't know how. Didn't feel much different. Then I had another experience when I was probably 19 in Georgia, the church I went to down there, where I really felt like I had a partner in Jesus in my life,
Mm.
right? Instead of feeling like I had to do it on my own. And that really felt like a big relief to me. And that felt materially different, which I had never felt before. And maybe similar to you, I didn't feel like I really, even though I went to church, sometimes more, sometimes less. And we lived in China, we didn't go a lot, right? But two things, I guess, that were different for me. One is because of being raised in a cult and a guy that thought he was God, leader of the cult, I was very skeptical of Jesus, like anybody that thinks they're God, right? I still have a skepticism. Um, and so that was always there. Then my big like daily walk with God didn't start till I got in recovery, like in 12 steps, where there's really steps of how to do this and really how to surrender and how to let go and how to make a daily walk with God. And that was my biggest transformation, for spiritual transformation, where I really feel like I have so much more peace in my life. I'm so much more present, like you talked about, like in the, conscious of what's going on. So much less stress, so much less fear, because I really have a faith that my main job, as it says in step 11, is to pray for God's will for me and have the strength to carry that out.
Mhm.
But if you're talking to somebody that has a skepticism about God or about Jesus or about faith as a whole, how do you explain the benefits that you have, and also how that they might be able to see it in steps that they can take to come toward God?
That's a great question. Well, I think I can only share my story, which I think is a good one. Is what I have done, and maybe that works for them. I think we're all kind of unique on how God made us, and what resonates. But for me, and I'm probably somewhat of a typical guy to some level. Whatever, driven, business guy, whatever, professional guy trying to do well. Is again the big thing for me is was and still and now is just investing in the relationship with God and slowing it down, truly studying scripture, being around other believers. Just like this morning, we have a ministry called In His Grip, which is a men's ministry, which has been a phenomenal blessing. But to be around and just to discuss the Bible, what it learns, what it teaches us, what do you think about it? Have that dialogue and put the time in has been transformational. And it's like anything, I think, and most guys and gals would appreciate this if they're trying to get better, achieve whatever, fitness, business success. You have to put the time in. I think we all kind of get that to some level. You're not going to have, unless you just, it's okay to have some luck or blessings, whatever. I'm all for that. But practical side is you got to do the work.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think I was listening to I think it was Simon Sinek yesterday, but I think that with faith, it's like health. You mentioned it's like relationships. It's like business to some extent, but there's no one point where you say, "Oh, that one workout made me healthy," or that one act that you did for Karen made her fall in love with you, or vice versa. But it's consistently, and here's the thing, you have to put the time, but it also doesn't have to be like 20 of the 20 hours in the day, right? If you work out 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week, a year from now, you're going to be much more healthy. You're not going to know where it starts, but you're going to be much more healthy.
No, for sure.
And, like for me, I put in every morning 10 to 15 minutes of meditation, 10 to 15 minutes of prayer, 10 to 15 minutes of journaling, 10 to 15 minutes of wisdom literature. And Arthur Brooks talks about that if you do 3 of those 4 things for 15 minutes a day, that's a total of 45 minutes. He said you won't recognize your life in 1 year from now, right? And it doesn't happen on a particular day, and it's not a tremendous amount of time. It's 45 minutes out of your 24 hours. But focusing, I mean, if you went without eating for a few days, you don't eat the whole day, but if you went without eating for a month, you'd be really sick, or if not dead, right?
Sure.
And the same way with exercise, and the same way with connections. I think that's another thing that's the integral part of most faith organizations is the community. right? In the connection. And as you and I were talking about yesterday, like the downsides of what happens when, especially middle-aged men, but everybody, but especially middle-aged men don't have connection. Anybody that doesn't have connection, but middle-aged men, especially ones that are driven in business, often don't make relationships important. So they don't have connection. And that's why we're seeing so many deaths of despair. Like I even saw in my family this week, of middle-aged guys that have made their life about work or something like that, and don't have community, don't have faith, don't have that connection. What happens so horribly, whether it's addictions and or death that comes into that space. So I'm curious about how, like, the practices that you found as you put more time in. You mentioned this in his group and that you meet with, and how you study scripture. How much time are you putting in? What are the things that you have found the most useful to be more conscious, to be more aware of God in your daily life? And how has that affected your life? Like, how is your life different today than what it was before you were doing that, say, 5 or 10 years ago?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's just this kind of go from a church like standpoint. So that's kind of normal. Okay, either I'm a Christian, I want to be, okay, you got to go to church, right? Okay, so I'm doing that. Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes I didn't do that, right? Again, going back on my path, Karen and I moved, I don't know, lost track 12, 15 times.
Yeah, wow.
On our path, and driven by work, basically career. So I think sometimes we moved and then we never went to church.
Right.
Right. Just because, you show up in Chicago or Charlotte or wherever, and, your head down doing your work, and I know I need to go to church, but by the time we've never figured it out.
Yeah. That was me in Shanghai. There was churches there, but for 3 years I didn't belong to a church because I just never figured it out,
Kind of knew I needed to go, we needed to go as a family, and maybe we went occasionally or whatever, but really not really even plugged into a church. So, I mean, I think that's important from now when we moved here, 5-6 years ago, we got plugged into the Church of the City here in the Nashville Franklin area, and we joined the church. That's the other thing. Is some of the other places we would go to, we found a church we liked, but we just show up on Sunday and, walk in, walk out. And it was good. It's better than not going. But we were really not really, going back to being consistent and going deeper. So that's a piece of it.
Can you talk about that? You just said going deeper. Like, what's the difference? Because I think a lot of people, in my opinion, go to church because they feel like they should.
Yeah.
And it's sort of tick the box, right? Okay, I went to church. And of course you do get some community, there's some benefit to that. But what's the part about going deeper? Because I went to church for a long time. I never had this like deep personal walk with God until the last few years. So when you said go deeper, what does that mean? What does that look like?
Well, I think specifically, that's dimensionalized, but I think on the church piece of my faith, that being more committed to the church, being more consistent, volunteering and or whatever, having people I know there, that's deeper.
So really starting to build a community through volunteering, through the time, through building friendships, building relationships.
Yeah. Could be, frankly, tithing, consistently. Okay, just set it up on auto, so it's in the way that, it's just going in. And and the reality is, I feel better. Not that I felt ever, bad about donating to a church or tithing, but if you're just kind of, putting the money in the plate and just kind of walk out, then you probably say, okay, I did a good thing. But if you're really more engaged in what the church is about and helping, then you're more likely to even give more or feel even better about the giving and more about what the church is doing with those dollars.
Right.
Versus just trusting that they're going to appropriately deploy it for God's good.
Right.
But the reality is, what I found, that's a piece of what I have done better. Praise the Lord.
Being deeper in the church body itself, making it there.
And then going with my fortunately enough, my oldest daughter and son-in-law and now grandson, they go with us.
That's awesome.
And how cool is that to be?
Yeah, 3 generations going to church together.
Grandson, Brooks, that's 9 months old, and setting the example. Right. And getting him started early. And then also, obviously, his parents, my daughter and son-in-law. That's how good is that for them? generationally to be sharing that together. And from a
Can I?
legacy
Yeah, no, that's
standpoint,
great. And I want to interrupt here because I know something about you that the audience doesn't know that I think would be really helpful. Greg's really successful as executive, hard-driven executive. And Greg, tell him about the decision about why you're here in Nashville, because I think that says a lot about your intentionality and where you are in life right now. Back to what you're talking about family going to church together.
yeah. Well, my journey again, working backwards was, really blessing career wise, but moving every 2 to 3 years, to great wife that would kind of go along with that, frankly, and support, and then obviously I have 2 daughters that were on that journey together. Yet, as time goes on, I mean, how great did I do of being a husband and a dad, right? I mean, I'm a 4 million miler. I'm like you are, travel, and you got to be careful what you wish for, maybe pray for. I wanted to do that early on, see the world and be this, global CEO, whatever. I got the cool title, nice income, whatever. But the reality is, I'm sure that came at somewhat of a cost for me and definitely my family.
Right.
So the years click off, and decades click off. Right, it can happen quickly. And I get into this is now 6 or 7 years, get into my 50s. I'm still doing that. Now, by that time, my kids are, coming out of high school, going into college, or coming out of college, going into life. And at that time, Karen and I living in Knoxville. So we're empty nesters. They're gone. They ended up in Nashville. And I just felt God led me to say, okay, enough's enough. We need to go to Nashville to be closer to Paige and Alexis. And for the right reasons. Just keep in mind that at that time they were like 18 and 22. I remember when I was 18 and 22, I didn't want to see my parents that
Yeah, you
much.
don't have anything to do with your parents, right?
Right. And so we kind of pressure tested that a little bit. And they were open to it. That sounds good. I don't know if they were like so excited because we're only like 2.5 hours, 3
Right.
hours.
Maybe Knoxville's far enough. Maybe it's perfect
You
time.
just can come over occasionally. But it just felt it was definitely a God thing, led to do that. And then also basically quit my job, which is not so easy to do when you are to some level your job. And by the way, my income was quite good, hundreds of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
To some level, whatever that's worth.
So at that point, though, you made a conscious decision.
Yep.
Not economical, didn't make sense, but it was God-led, heartfelt. Like, I want to be close. I'm going to be intentional about building this legacy, building this family. Even if I didn't do it perfectly, I did a lot of things great growing up, raising my kids. But now I really want to make it really intentional. And so you moved here 5, 6 years ago. And then now today you're even going to church together. And I know you mentioned that you play in golf all the time with your son-in-laws. And
yeah, for sure. I talked to my other son-in-law this morning. First thing he calls me, because I had lunch with him last Thursday or Friday, and he's my younger son-in-law Jake, and we have a good enough relationship. He calls me this morning asking about what he should do on a car. I mean, this is not like high level, strategic stuff. I mean, in his world, it is a high level decision what they should do, trade a car, bike, whatever. But to have the level of relationship with him, this is my daughter's husband, right? It's a big deal for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Which you wouldn't have if you hadn't made that very intentional.
Unlikely if I'm in wherever, I don't know how it all plays out. I mean, the reality is, but trusting in the Lord and following that lead and having a lot of uncertainty, that as I reflect back, that was the best decision I ever made, because it enabled us to be close, help them through various things that's happened in their lives. We were here to do it, still are here to do it, and be a part of it, and then also grow. Karen and I have grown even closer, because obviously I have more time to do that, and now we're all together. I mean, how good is that? That was like a dream that's coming true. It's still evolving. But if I would not have followed, really trusted in the Lord, and kind of took the leap 5 or 6 years ago, likely we wouldn't be at the point as a family are right now. I'm not saying we're the perfect family, for sure. We got stuff happens just like every family every day, but I think we're built better in our faith in our relationships to whatever happens to deal with it.
Yeah, well, it's clearly there's one thing to say I love you, and there's another thing to change your life dramatically to show I love you, right? And
Hmm.
that whether it is consciously felt at the time by the rest of your family, it definitely seeks into the bones and the water over
Yeah, for
time.
sure.
So I really commend you for making that decision. And I love that you're living as an intergenerational family in the same city today, and being in church together and engaged in each other's lives. I really think that's one of the big lessons from the Bible is living in community, right? And really taking care of each other. So
Well,
that's
and we were blessed when we came. This is back even backing up when we were in Chicago. Came back to Tennessee like 15, 6 years. We did that also. I think we had a pull to come back to take care of our parents. Karen and I, our parents were getting. We all, obviously that's just life. We go through that, and we did that. Fortunately enough, I had, God made
Were
that
they in
happen.
Knoxville or were they in this area, Greg?
Yeah, they were in Knoxville. We were in Chicago. I was leading Komatsu's business at the time, which was a great job for sure. But it's hard to take care of aging parents from Chicago. Uh, and how cool is it that I got an offer, which we were praying for it to be, to have a great job in Knoxville so we could move. And I did. I got a great job as a CEO of a global company. And there's not that many CEO jobs in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Right.
That's a small market. But anyway, so that made it. And then the point with that is my dad, we were able to spend time with him his last years, which is a blessing. If we
Yeah.
stay in Chicago and just keep grinding it out, we don't get to be a part of that. Obviously, our kids see that. The other part is Karen's mother was having some challenges at the time. She moves in with us as soon as we got back. This is now 15, 16 years ago. And she lived with us she passed away also a couple of years ago, but she moved here to Nashville with us. And we built our home here with her in mind. She had her own. So the point is this multi-generational, what we're supposed to do, the Bible, and it's old school, right? And if we go back to how it used to be done, um, it's not as done as much today for various reasons. But the fact that it was no burden. It didn't feel like a burden to do this. It felt like we loved having her mother with us, and we would do it over 100 times. But the point is that family dynamics and pouring into your whatever generationally. I'm a huge believer in that, and it makes life so much more fruitful
Absolutely.
for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think that's I couldn't have made it through my kids' teenage years without my wife's parents
Yeah.
being heavily involved, right? And I see that yeah, and it's interesting, even people that grow up with a grandparent in their house from when they were born actually live 7.5 years longer
I believe that.
that people don't, because largely the theory is because they see old people as fun and healthy and having time, and so that's what they carry for themselves into old age, which helps them live a happier, longer, more productive life, right? When they're first exposed to, when they're quite young, exposed to people that are a lot older, that are healthy and vibrant and taking care of them and have time to play and do other things. So
Well, and again, we're living that on the front side, obviously, with Brooks, being a part of his life. And I was sharing with a friend of mine this morning, in his grip brother. He has a 6-month-old grandson. Mine's 9, so we have obviously common, feelings. And his son, they live in D.C. They're moving back to Tennessee. So I said, "Oh, you're going to love it." His name's Gary. And so I said to him, just to be able to see your grandson, like I see Brooks. I just saw my wife leave. She's going to go get him. He'll be here in 30 minutes. I see him
nice.
almost
Yeah,
every
that's awesome.
day, and I'm just eating it up, and I'm pouring in. I mean, I'm going to pour into him, and he's pouring into me.
Absolutely. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people don't realize. It pours both directions, right? There's so much benefit for mixed generations, right?
That
So much
I
benefit.
don't believe it happens, but the fact the relationships already I have with Brooks, I probably don't have that relationship if I'm I'm in Sao Paulo, Brazil,
Right.
know, helping our company sell cranes or whatever
And
and
and think about the part we haven't even talked about in between there, is how much benefit it is to your daughter and your son-in-law as well.
yeah, yeah, and they appreciate it, and they're
I mean,
and
how much huge benefit that is for them, because it's impossible, children are meant to be raised in community. It's
yeah, for,
impossible to raise by yourself. We try in this society a lot now, but it's not healthy,
no,
uh,
for sure.
for sure. So clearly, the faith underpins all this. A question I have is, if you hadn't made that transition, if you hadn't come to faith, come to God, come to Jesus when you're 20, how do you think your life would be different today? Like where would say you never made that faith journey? Where do you see your life being today, Greg?
I don't know. It wouldn't be. It'd be. I could be dead. I
Yeah.
mean, it
Yeah.
sounds horrible to say that, but it would. It's nowhere even close. I have no idea. It would not be good. I came, from, everybody's got, you can have challenging or great backgrounds, but, I have a lot of folks in my family that had, substance abuse issues, whatever stuff, just hard stuff. I grew up around that. I could have easily gone that path. And, if you're on that path, you're generally not going to do well professionally, obviously. You can't
Or
provide
relationally.
a
Yeah.
relation that's so. I mean, it could be totally in the ditch, or dead. I'm capable of doing that, no
Right.
question.
Right. Those genes are right there. Yeah.
The genes are there. Others around me did that and had that outcome. So, so I'm so thankful for that. That's why I go back to. That's where the catalyst for me started. Then it's been up to me, right? Maybe I was a slow learner or whatever. And again, I'm still learning. I'm not, I'll be learning probably, hopefully, to the day I die. But the reality is, that definitely got me on a right track for sure.
Yeah.
And even like educationally, like I was a B student in high school, whatever, party guy, whatever, fun guy. I didn't take anything seriously. And then again, I didn't even know if I could be good enough to even to go to college. Forget, anything beyond that. I mean, my parents, God bless them, neither one of them even graduated from high school.
Right.
My
Wow.
dad, like sixth, seventh grade education, my mom 11th. So I didn't have this model but I, did go to college and I tried really hard and I did pretty well. And then I got saved. And then it just kind of kept, and then I got a good job and then I just kind of kept growing. But that 20-year-old transformation spiritually, I think had a huge difference on, I think God got me to that point to position me for that. And then I was kind of off and running. But frankly, in retrospect, I didn't really, I look back 40 years ago, I didn't really appreciate, I know I appreciate that. In the moment, I probably didn't. Even when I was whatever success I was having, more professionally initially, then great wife, kids, whatever, I wasn't greatly thankful. It was like, I'm doing this. This is like, Greg, I am so good. I am smart. I'm not working everybody. I'm
I'm
having,
special. I can work harder. I've got more skills. I've got more smarts. I've got more talent.
yeah, and then just kind of keep doubling, tripling down on that. And I mean, that could easily have been another train wreck. And in many cases, it is.
Right. Yeah,
For-
absolutely. Yeah,
it's
you get
more,
too into that, it becomes another addiction, like it was for me.
yeah, for sure. And I would say I never had any, praise the Lord, any kind of, alcohol or gambling or or ladies or anything like that addiction, but I was addicted to work. And to some level, I don't know really about money. I liked the money that came out of the work, but I think it was more addicted just to the prestige and the work and the challenge and all that. By the way, and then the money came, and then it just kind of just like gasoline on the fire. Then okay, I want more of that. And the practical side, I think the Lord woke me up, several years ago and said, okay, how much does that now, how much is enough, or
Right.
is that all life is about? I remember being in like hotel rooms, like on a Saturday night, like at the Helsinki airport. I'm thinking, like, what am I doing?
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I worked all the way up to the end of I'm out in the other part of the world.
And then you have to get home in 2 or 3 stops.
And it's like I'm eating dinner at the Helsinki Hilton on a Friday or Saturday night by myself. And I mean, how lonely is that?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just shallow.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I
Talk
think,
about going deep. That's going narrow. That's going shallow.
yeah, no, that's right. And I think in Workaholics Anonymous, we talk about that the addiction to work is also, it is also a substance addiction to adrenaline, because we get so used to being on all the time. And then when something gets uncomfortable, instead of sitting with that uncomfort, instead of waiting on God, we just want to go get our hit of adrenaline. And it's easy to do something for work for that keeps us busy and distracted. And I know that's the way I lived for quite a while. So if you could go back, you say you didn't do everything perfectly, and you obviously none of us do, and you felt like you were the one creating anything. If you could go back and tell your younger self one thing now, if you could go back to that 20-year-old that was in that transition, and obviously at that 20-year-old, you shifted your life some degrees with that faith choice, and that shift made a huge impact over time, right? I mean, 1 degree change over time, consistency makes a huge difference. And if you could still go back and tell yourself one other thing from this perspective, 40 years later, Greg, or 39 years later, what would you tell that younger Greg Hewitt at 20 years old?
Well, basically to take this commitment to Jesus and this recommitment of your life really seriously, and as we've said, put the time into it, smartly, to appreciate it and to be disciplined, to not get too far ahead of yourself, and just to pour into that faith and build on it as the foundation of your life versus all these other things. And that will give you peace, not perfection, not that it's
Right.
going
There isn't any, right?
basically, but you will have the armor of God, and whatever happens, you'll be able to get through it, and whatever
Yeah,
that is.
that statement right there to me is maybe the most important, to realize if you have the armor of God, if you have this strong faith, whatever comes, you can get through it. Whatever it is. That is the only way that you can get this peace of God that surpasses all understanding. Because otherwise we can fret about anything, right? We really can fret about anything, right?
For sure. In today's world, it's infinite.
Yeah, there's plenty to fret about, right? But,
And I can appreciate all those things for sure. But as we all know, there's anxiety for everyone, young and old, rich and poor, is arguably at an all-time high. And there's lots of reasons for that. You've got more information and I guess more people, more things to worry about, whatever. But the practical side, if you don't have God, then we talked about it, if you don't have God, how do you deal with that? I don't know. I mean,
yeah, I don't know either. And I know some people that do okay with that, but I know for me, like, I mean, I was laying in bed sick while I was still working with a bunch of money saved and literally fearing of getting fired and starving. And that's a totally irrational fear, that's for sure. But I was sitting there with that. And now I'm, 2.5 years out of no job, and I'm doing just fine, as God promised me I would during that time. And I'm not starving, and I've got peace, which I didn't even have peace at that point, right? So,
No, it's a common thing, and I'm obviously in the business that God's allowed us to have is quote a wealth management business now, a business advisory business. That's what we've evolved into professionally. So obviously it's interesting. We have my team and our staff. We're talking to folks about about money, right? But the practical side, it gives us a platform to talk about bigger things. And what I found is, just like myself and probably yours, even though you have whatever wealth, financial wealth, that is not a determination of peace. It's actually inverse.
yeah.
And all the stats will back it up. Is the more you have, just if it's only
Yeah, up to a certain level, it goes up, but after that level, it goes down again, right? After a certain level of wealth.
Yeah, I mean,
That's a pretty low level. It's a pretty low level.
Well, I met with a fellow yesterday. He's 48, lives in my neighborhood, helping on some various things, having good discussions. And he's in Bible in his group with me, so strong believer. But he has, he said my biggest thing is I still have a lot of anxiety. I mean, so even though he is a strong believer for sure, but he's still, grinding it out. Got 2 kids in college, 2 in high school, but he's living in a really good neighborhood, and he's in good, but he's still got a lot of anxiety. So the reality is, I mean, well, you have to, but the good thing for him is he has strong faith. And he has good, and then he has somebody to talk to about this too.
Right. Well, that's huge.
That's a big deal. And
even just to say I'm feeling a lot of anxiety, even if I feel really guilty because my life is perfect, but I'm still just to be able to say that
that's a big
is
deal.
the first step of healing, right? From business, to define a problem is to have it 80% solved, right? If you don't acknowledge it, if you don't speak it, you can't solve it, right? So good for him for being in that place. But it's also like, again, we can have anxiety about anything, right? And so it's a need to have that faith that things are going to be all right, whatever comes, and to not live in that fear. Like, I'm so grateful. Like, I love this quote. I think it's on my front desk right here, but it says, a happy life is merely a succession of happy moments. But most people forgo the happy moment in pursuit of a happy life. So you're pursuing something that you think is happy life in the end. That's only a result, and you're giving up any chance of having a happy life, and you don't even know if that thing is going to make that you're pursuing is going to make you happy anyway. So instead, how can I be in the moment? How do I need to connect right now? Part of my meditation in the morning, I'm often thinking about three things that I'm grateful for and really reflecting on those. And what I love in my life right now, most of them now are happened in the last 24 hours. And I don't have to think back to my wedding or being on the mountaintop somewhere. I do think about those sometimes, but 2 out of 3 usually are things that happened in the last day, and that's the way that's the way God intends for our life to be.
Yeah, and I've definitely been more like that for sure. I'm evolving into that, just enjoying the day or the moment way better. Again, being a corporate business guy, wired this way. And again, we got to, our business today is a lot about planning. I was on just before we met. I was with a young couple via Zoom. I guess what I'm planning out that building a model for them, a plan for them, and they're 30 something to get them to 90. but I'm always, I'm just, this is just a model to show what could happen. Then I'm trying to, anybody's work. Okay, let's get, I don't even know what's going to happen really tomorrow.
Right. No, that's right. But what's the purpose? And I know because I'm not in your wealth management group, but I'm on very similar with the same tools and so forth. What's the purpose of that plan that you're giving them? What's the real purpose? Like 2 levels down. What's the real purpose?
Well, the real purpose is to give them peace and a plan that's going to be okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, it's got to work back. It's the same. They got to work back.
But you have no idea really what's going to happen with that plan.
No,
Eisenhower said, planning is everything. Plans are nothing, right? But it gives them peace and a plan of action to take steps on. But the thing is, it gives peace. Like that's the thing that my financial advisor says every time at the end of our conversation and planning session. How do you feel, Art?
Yeah.
Do you feel better than you did when we started? And I always do, right? Even if the plan is, nobody knows what's going to happen with plans, right? But the process gives us peace, and that's the point. And of course, there's concrete things that do make things better in general if you follow it, right?
But it's no different than it's just tied in with our relationship with God and the plans He has for us. We don't even know what those plans are, but we trust. If you're, and I'm getting better and better and better at this. You trust in those plans, and through Scripture study, what is what's best practices, and our vocabulary of business. It's in the Bible. All this
The faith, right?
There is a handbook here how to do this. It's called the Bible, and it's got all different types of dimensions and stories that illuminate. But there's a lot of practicality, and here's what the ABCs of to live this life. But the reality is, we have to trust that if we do the right things, follow Him, and be as close. We can't be Jesus Christ, but we can try to have His same, aspire to be like Him in our actions and how we treat others and how we live our lives. Then therefore it goes back to we have peace or more peace. We'll never have a perfect peace probably, but I've found, basically 59, I have more peace now. And maybe I should, I get it. If you're 25 or 35, there's just
It's
lot
a different stage of life for sure.
I appreciate that. I don't want to say, I got all this peace. They're probably saying, you're 60 years old. You got, whatever you like, you got a lot of this stuff behind you. That's true. But that said, is a lot of these things, going back to your question, at 20 or 25, if I were to know and really, I would push that forward.
Yeah. No, and I think it's really important too to have this conversation, Greg, because the bottom line is I didn't have anyone at 59 when I was 20 telling me that it can be a little bit different, right? That it will work out okay, right? I didn't have anybody telling me that, right? And that's what you're doing for your son-in-laws and daughters and grandkids, right? And so I think, yes, it's a different phase of life. Yes, it's different purposes. And by the way, for me, this is the best phase of life. A lot of people, I don't want to get old. I don't want to be 50 or 60. It's the best phase of life there is for me right now, hands down.
No, I agree.
And so, but also a big part of it doesn't mean that we can't help those that are 20 or 30. Yeah, they got to go through their thing. They got to build their career just like we did, or their family or their community, but they can still do it in a more peaceful, a more aware, a more faithful, a more connected way than maybe we did, and learn some of the lessons. So I think it's really important to share that. So in that vein, Greg, if there was one tool that you could give our listeners? Like that there is one thing that they could start to do today that you feel would really make a difference for that 20-year-old, or maybe a 59-year-old that also is clinging to the 20-year-old status symbols, which a lot of us do, right? That I was doing that at 49, like clinging to my identity as a big business executive. What tool would you give them? What practical thing that they could start doing right now would you give them that you think would be that 1 degree that would start them on a better life?
Well, I think at the core of it's the Bible and Bible study. And again, there's all kinds of ways to do that. There's electronic ways to do it. There's old school, get the black covered Bible out, which for me, I think is I tried to do that over the years. It was hard, just to like read the Bible, page to page. I've done that, and for me, I found getting study. I got a couple of Bible study guides. I've got a Tony Evans study guide, and I've got a Charles Stanley study guide. Every morning I read both of them. It's the same scripture, and again through our In His Grip ministry, we have a verse or two every day that we study together, and we in a community. And then I personally have developed a process, but it's all around Bible study. And again, I've got a community, that we do it together. That held me accountable. But I think it starts with the Word, and then for me, again, for what works for me, that has enabled me to get in a habit, being consistent every day, generally in the mornings. There may be a few mornings I get something and I always, if it happens, then I can tell it. I'm just going to open up my laptop, and because I got to check on something real quick, and then I'm off track.
Right.
So I found, for me anyway, I got to do that before the day starts.
So really the key for you would be, and specifically, and if you're already in the Christian faith or a Bible-based faith, that's great, is in the Bible, but definitely sometime in the morning before the day starts where you center yourself on God and wisdom. Yep. Before you do anything else.
Yep, for sure.
And even if it's, let me ask you this, like, say I'm a super busy dad, I'm 29 years old, I got 3 young kids, I got a career, or mom, even busier if she's the one taking care of the 3 kids. How much time do you have to spend to make it worthwhile? Like if I spend 5 minutes, does that make a difference?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The Bible app, you can get your Bible app on your phone, which I look at that too. I've got Joel Osteen Bible app. I've got, 5 or 6, 7, 8 different tools. And if you had 5 minutes, you open up the Bible app, there's scripture, a verse or verses, and it guides you through the scripture. There's like a little 2-minute video that's somebody's talking about it, and there's some prayers. 5 minutes later, there's a lot there in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It depends on, but yeah, if you only got 2 minutes, something.
Right. No, I think that makes a huge difference, and you also start to feel, if you take that 2 minutes consistently, you start to feel in control of your life more too, if it feels too.
And then it layers. I've been doing this now, really through In His Grip mostly, because we've got it's a model, and it's a community, and it's Bible based, and it's guide, and whatever. It works for me, and I think maybe not perfect for you, but
right.
But for me, it works like great. Because it's checking all the boxes.
Right.
And also the piece that where I was always missing is the small group or the community piece of Bible study. Honestly, I felt too dumb or not secure in my faith.
Illiterate in Bible speak, so to speak.
People invite Karen and I, whoever, to a Bible study. I don't want to show up to that. I'd be the dumbest guy in the room. And I don't know anything compared to these theologians, but what I found, guess what? We're all trying to figure it out. Yeah, some are maybe a little more on top of that. In this group I'm with this morning, there's 28, 30 guys there. If it was a test given on, to take a Bible test, I might be 2/3 down the list. It doesn't matter. I could be the last guy on the list as long as I'm engaging and learning. And also, here's what I think that says, guys. I might be it's an open dialogue. And then, by the way, you find out, well, maybe we're all kind of thinking the same thing, or there's something that I didn't see there. But you got to humble yourself a little bit in your pride and just be you.
Right.
I would say that's the other thing is do that. It's okay. Maybe you say, yeah, you're 60, whatever extra, you do that. But yeah, if I was 25, I wish I would have done that.
Yeah,
Or
and I
30.
think that's a really good point. I think it's, I even have fear of something. Well, I believe a little bit different than that guy, and then I'm not going to be accepted in the group, right? And whatever the group is, but especially in a Bible study group for me
No,
personally, right? And so I think that's really important to be willing to be yourself, and then see, and if that Bible group is following Jesus, that you will be accepted in that group, right?
no.
And in every situation, to be willing to show up as yourself. Not everybody's going to like you anyway. You might as well be yourself. Otherwise, you're going to hate yourself for not being yourself, and people aren't going to like. And not everybody's going to like you anyway. So be yourself. Be willing to show up. Be vulnerable. Build community. And I like what you said. Just to do something, even if it's 2 minutes, to start to build a habit of focusing on everybody that has a good life. And I'm not talking about money here. I'm talking about everybody that has a good life does something intentional in the mornings. They maybe all do a little bit different things, but they're doing something that starts their day with a focus on faith, exercise, nature, whatever it is. There's not anybody that I know that has a really balanced and peaceful life full of good relationships that doesn't start their day intentionally. And I know from my experience, there's a direct correlation by my ramping up I call morning practices and the peace and joy and relationships I have in my life, 100%.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
I really appreciate that, Greg. Hey, one last question then, if you want, where can our listeners find out more about you and what you're doing now?
It's a good question.
When you're
Professionally,
not doing Life in Transition podcast,
yeah. Well, obviously I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook, so they can connect with me. Greg Hewitt on those, portals. So I'm not like super active guy that way that's posting all kinds of cool stuff, but I mean that's a way they can connect. Our business is Axiom Wealth Management Group. So if there's any interest in helping anybody professionally that way, or it doesn't have to be that, it could be just a way to connect. Obviously we have a website, axiomwealthmanagement.com or something like that. So
well, we'll put those in the show notes. And if people want to just reach out with you, the question, is it best on LinkedIn or Facebook? Is that the best way to reach out to you?
either of those are fine. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool.
Be responsive. So yeah, any way I can help anyone, just if it's just a question, I'd be glad to get on a Zoom or whatever. I mean, I'm in a mode of serving and helping
and I can tell you, listeners out there, Greg's not just saying that, because Steve and I had a lot of lunches where it was sort of a one-way conversation. Hey, Greg, you've already made this transition. You've stepped out of the big rat race. How did you do it? How did it work? And I don't know how many, lunches and phone calls we had, Greg, but it was a lot. And it was mostly you pouring into me at that time. And I really appreciate that. So you're definitely speaking the truth there.
Well, I get more out of it probably. And I think, I enjoy it. So it's I love doing it. So I feel like that's what the Lord. And again, honestly, I'm still learning like crazy myself. So again, it's, sharpens iron, and the time we spent together, it certainly made me better. And again, we're, respectfully, be able to do this with you, what a blessing. If, go back to if I'm so busy or whatever, and we don't even have that, then we're not doing this. So, I mean, it's proven out so many times to take the time, to, spend time with folks multiple ways. There's obviously we can be be hanging out with the wrong folks, that's, but if it's the right folks at the right time, then it works out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, Greg, I really appreciate it. I appreciate your heart. I appreciate that you made decisions from your heart in this, as you're starting your second half. I'm sure in the first half as well, but definitely as you start in the second half, it's definitely been an inspiration to me. I know it'll be an inspiration to our listeners as well. I will post all of your contact information in the show notes so people can be in touch with you. And I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Greg.
Right. All right. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can't wait to hear what action you are taking. Connect with me on LinkedIn or our website, lifeintransition.online, and let me know. Let a friend know too. It could be a huge encouragement to them and keep you on the track. Thank you so much for joining me today. Make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and it would mean a lot to me if you left a review and shared this episode with a friend. If you want to learn more about me and what I do when I'm not podcasting, please visit me at artblanchford.com. Thank you for listening. Together, let's make the most of life in transition.